Greetings to all the colleagues who are joining us today in this part 2 of our series on the white paper on local government. As we have started on the 23rd of June with our first webinar. Honestly, we didn't anticipate that we'll have part 2, and I can assure you this afternoon part 3, part 4, and part 5 might be loading given the importance of where our local government is, but most importantly, the importance of the phase that we are in reviewing the 1998 white paper on local government to take into account all the realities of today. My name is Zolani and the surname is Zonyane. I'm the editorial head, webinar curator and moderator at the Municipal Edge. Today we've got we are honored to have our Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance, Dr. Masemola, who will be taking us just through key insights, the presentations, and also what are the expectations from the audience, because some of us, I believe, have not made their comments. Some will possibly be hearing about this process for the first time. Let me allow you, Deputy Minister, just to greet our audience.
Well, a very good afternoon to you and everyone in the platform. A very good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let me allow, in the panel, we've got Mr. Mapholoba, who is the municipal manager from Knysna Municipality.
Let me greet the DM, Dr. Masemola, greet Dr. Kaywood, yourself as the moderator, Daniel and all other colleagues who are on the platform. I see that we are now around 123, which is a very wonderful attendance. We are looking forward to the participation of everybody, more especially that we have got the DM here, who is driving this process. I know that he has been up and down in the Northern Cape, all over the country. Even the minister is up and down, than ever before, which I think it will give the required results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MM. Dr. Kaywood.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lungelwa Kaywood. I am from Stellenbosch University under the Faculty of Law, representing the Chair Urban Law and Sustainability Governance. I am also assisting with the Municipal Edge as an editor. So I'm happy to be participating in this follow-up session, especially that we are joined by the Deputy Minister and everyone that is joining online. I hope we have a fruitful discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for those brief introductions. As we normally do, we can start our webinars before I can thank yourself, Dan, and the team at Future Cities Africa for really opening up this platform for us to have these conversations. That also goes to our team within the Municipal Edge to ensure that we continue bringing up quite a good content. We continue to empower not only those in public service, but ordinary citizens, as we have also in this webinar. We've got civil society organizations, we've got academia, we've got representatives from all the 3 spheres of government, state entities, and you name it. And of course, business engineering for sponsoring this webinar. We are grateful to Philip and the team in ensuring that we are always powered and always looking forward to deliver as we engage on these topical issues. And of course, the support that we continue to get from those whom we share, I would say, the same vision of reimagining local government, of changing the status quo. That is the Chartered Institute of Government Finance, Audit and Risk Officers in SIGFARO, which we also had a panelist from the webinar we had on the 23rd of June. Of course, the South African Local Government Association and the Center for Municipal Asset Management. As I've indicated, be in the lookout for future webinars that are focusing specifically on this particular subject, because when we started in June, we didn't anticipate that we'll be having part 2 today. But again, judging by the comments, the questions that have come through, the interest on the topic itself, which is the review of the white paper, it also gives us that opportunity to make that commitment unapologetically, to say we will continue to bring these webinars specifically with a focus on this particular subject of the white paper. Colleagues, as you know, to our audience, our chat box is open. The Q&A option is also open for those who have answers. And for your information at DM, we've got quite a lively audience that doesn't shy away from sharing its own insights, posing those tough questions, and ensuring that it contributes to the discourse of reimagining, a discourse of building our local government. Colleagues, before I allow the Deputy Minister to come in, I thought it's proper just to run through a brief bio, also for the benefit of those who might not possibly know the background of the Deputy Minister, the road that he has traveled up to this point. We often say it's always better, even at a political leadership level, to be led by someone who has got an understanding of the space that he or she operates in. If I am to share briefly about Dr. Masemola, he's a seasoned political leader and public servant, as we might all know at this point, with an illustrious career spanning over 3 decades in governance, political leadership, and community development. He currently serves as a Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance within that broader Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs within the Republic, and he is also a Member of Parliament, as we might all be aware. Dr. Masemola's public service journey began in the anti-apartheid youth movements of the 1980s, where he played active roles in various community and political organizations. He has since held several senior leadership positions in the African National Congress, including Deputy Provincial Chairperson of the ANC in Limpopo, Chairperson of the Sekhukhune region, and currently serves as a member of the ANC, NEC, better known as the National Executive Committee, where he is Deputy Chair of the Local Government Intervention Team and convener of NEC deployees to KwaZulu-Natal. As I draw closer to the end, as I try to shorten the bio, Dr. Masemola has also contributed significantly to the South African Local Government Association, where he served in various leadership capacities, including Deputy Secretary General and Chairperson of SALGA in Limpopo. He has represented South Africa in international forums on local governance, having participated in missions to over 30 countries and serving on the executive structures of organizations such as United Cities and local governments. For the purpose of time, I'll pause there I'll share the link to the bio of the Deputy Minister so that we can all have access and see the wonderful work that the DM has contributed in. DM, once more, we are honored to have you in this webinar. We will allow you just to share with our audience the developments around this particular subject, but having listened to your various presentations, even someone who might have heard you or saw you speaking in the previous week or a week before, definitely there is something new that will be coming in today. Welcome, DM, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, facilitator of this important meeting this afternoon. A very good afternoon to all the leaders who are in the platform coming from different areas of public responsibilities. On behalf of the Ministry and the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, a very good afternoon to all of you colleagues. I'm going to try as much as I could to take you through this presentation, which ordinarily takes a very long time, but I'll try to move as quick as I could in the interest of time. Mindful also of the fact that we're discussing this matter and when the deadline it's this coming Thursday for submissions by various stakeholders throughout the country. But be that as it may, the presentation overview is as it appears on the screen, starting with the purpose right up to the conclusion. The next slide is about what the minister was able to do to inform the people of South Africa and elsewhere in the world, those who are interested on matters of governance, and particularly our sector across the globe and even in our continent, to see the work that we are going to be doing in the next coming few months towards the 31st of March 2026. So the Gazette is out for public comments and as well as engagement. And the next slide is about, this slide is very important, basically is at the core of the system that we are discussing this afternoon. We are quite aware that in the Republic of South Africa, we do have 257 municipalities categorized as they appear on the screen, 205 local municipalities, metros, there are 8, and the district municipalities, there are 44. We are expected to discuss the architecture of this sphere of government and look at its design, look at its systems, and look at the structures and the extent to which it has been modeled for functionality, delivery of services, but as well as efficiency and effectiveness. So we've got to be able to look at those matters very closely as we analyze all these different categories of municipalities as they appear on this screen at this point in time with regard to the actual objectives of what we seek to want to achieve going forward. The next slide, it is about the intentions of the department and government broadly as we represent the national executive in this national policy discussion. In simple terms, this slide says we are analyzing a system of local government and therefore informed by principles of systems management and therefore systems approach in terms of readjusting this particular process. We want to trigger, or we have already started to do so, a very broad, robust, intensive political and civic organizational engagement on these matters of the policy so that we can occasion the system for better performance through restructure it, through reviews, but above them all as well, making sure that this system, it is basically well placed to take forward the developmental agenda of our government through local government and therefore South Africans are invited for a very serious engagement to ensure reposition, restructuring, and therefore finally bring about change management in the manner in which things have been handled in the sector. And the next slide, it's a contextual framework documents that are very important, that we all know that the South African local government system is well enshrined in the Constitution, if not codified in law, and to the extent that Chapter 7 of our country's Constitution very seriously articulates all what goes with the sector. And I think and believe that colleagues have been very closer to these processes. Importantly, it is the extent to which, as we assess this local government system, would be to check how it has been performing even now, whether it is still doing very well in advancing the implementation of the NDP and as well as the medium-term development plan. And to the extent that the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa enshrined in itself very clearly this system of government. The 1998 white paper became a foundational policy document that drove the transformation of local government in our country, and to the extent that we were able to promulgate those series of laws that appears on the screen shows that this document is very primary. And at this point in time, we are not developing a new policy document, but in fact, reviewing the one that we have, which we regard as being very foundational up to this point in time. And therefore, we need to look at whether the extent to which this policy has translated the actual systems processes to implement the country's constitution. How have we performed at this point in time as we look at these laws, as we get informed by the intentions of the policy deriving its authority from Chapter 7 of the Constitution. So it's a very important foundational document which up to so far almost 27 years of its existence within the 30 years of our democratic project, it has facilitated and ensured establishment and up to a point where we are of consolidation of this system of government. And therefore, this slide in terms of its intentions is to say to the people of South Africa that we have been able to give our communities very serious structures of local government, starting from the actual conceptualization of key concepts around which the Constitution could well be implemented. Cooperative government at its best. We have given South African people metropolitan municipalities and all what goes with regard to this particular system. But very importantly, what colleagues must be able to discuss with regard to that slide is the extent to which the system has withstood the actual massive implementation of national macroeconomic strategies of the Republic of South Africa, starting with RDP, early 1994, followed by GIE, GIPSA, SGIZA, Youth Growth Path, the National Development Plan, and now under this current administration, the Medium-Term Development Plan. Within that period of 30 years, this system was never adjusted, even though at the national level, we have adjusted quite a number of occasions the macroeconomic strategy of this country, and unavoidably all those massive national objectives would have had their own impact on the capacity on the system to the extent that it is basically either troubled or needing some serious attention. All those national efforts and initiatives have impacted this system in one way or the other. And as we do so, we seek to create an ideal municipalities for the people of South Africa so that all what appears there as foundational elements of this policy, they remain policy mainstay, and the extent to which we can be in a better position to translate them into serious programs and activities and give the people of this country what this screen says, democratic and accountable local government that is very responsive and actually delivers services, give our people safe social spaces, and the extent to which we can be able to ensure massive participation of communities and drive, equally important, some of the national determined objectives around inclusive economy, developmental state, and how do we use this system to fight poverty and unemployment. All those matters put together from our experiences on how municipalities are functioning in this country. It will be very interesting to hear how colleagues are using your own areas of assessment. We believe that we can be able to give South African people and ideal municipalities. That's basically what we are actually looking forward to, because our people deserve much better. They deserve better services. They deserve functional institutions of municipalities characterized by those foundational ideas as they appear on the screen. Complex as it is in terms of its character and content, we've got to provide the social capital so much required to articulate and advance the actual management politically and administratively of this particular system. And therefore, this slide says very briefly, it gives us the journey we've traveled since 1995 to date and basically addresses two fundamental issues. The first one is that when we got to 2016, having planted a very good system of government from 1995, we began to see political parties losing political power from 2016 coming this way, of course, with the emergence of coalition politics in municipalities. And those two issues unavoidably have had their own impact on the functionality and the stability of our municipalities. The extent to which coalition politics and the inability of parties to manage those spaces in a manner that they put forward the interests of communities. I think examples are all over the country where local coalition politics have mismanaged even our big cities in many parts of our country. So how do we deal with those issues to address the withering away of good features of local government system that we have seen over years, which unfortunately at this point in time finds itself in a very serious predicament of mismanagement, of leadership that is not necessarily quite impacting this system correctly. As I'm saying, the inter-party political dynamics of coalition equally important, contributing very seriously to the actual problems that municipalities are experiencing. So the journey we have traveled, it's very important that as given this particular slide, we can be able to assess those good times, those difficult times, but up to a point where we are now, we're in a very critical era that we need to be able to save the system and re-engineer it for a better performance in terms of looking after the general welfare of our people, including delivery of services. The next slide, it is about the areas of achievements and as well as challenges. But most importantly, with regard to this slide, we are saying that this policy remains very important. And despite its centrality and primacy, these issues that are appearing on the screen have been lifted as areas that requires very close attention and response on how do we deal with inherent systemic and as well as structural problems and issues of performance. And to the extent that both political leadership and administrative leadership are responsible for the flip side realities of what is supposed to be ideal situations within our municipalities. How do we look at all those issues from a point of correcting them and positioning this particular system with a view to deal with those issues that appears on the screen and turn them into very good systems of our government and deliver services as enshrined or deliver the mandate as obligated by the overarching law of the Republic of South Africa, being our constitution. The next slide. This slide here says, to the extent that we have been able to deliver a very good system of government in this country, South Africans are very lucky because their system of government is codified in law, and everything that has got to do with its performance and its work is not something that is subject to the whims of parliament or ministers. And therefore, these areas of achievements are very important. And I suppose many South Africans can attest to a lot of things that have been done very well over a reasonable period of time. But unfortunately, or conversely, there are still issues which are very traumatic. Each part of this particular slide says there are good things that we have achieved, but equally important, the downside of that, there are other matters that are negating the very same positive development that we have been able to achieve. How do we deal with all those issues, starting from the dynamics and challenges of governance as it relates to party dynamics? How do we deal with problems and issues relating to infrastructure delivery, maintenance, and as well as the extent to which we can look at matters of grant funding, whether the money that is allocated to municipalities is quite enough or not for them to meet their developmental needs and carry forward implementation of their own integrated development plans. Whether from a finance point of view in terms of management, the state of finances report is very worrying, and therefore the accountability ecosystem, and to the extent that the municipal public accounts committees have been set up to basically enforce in the accountability system serious elements of management. Unfortunately, despite that system of accountability, their impact is said to be very much worrying, because our reports in terms of analysis and assessments point to the negative. The capacity so much required administratively and politically, and all those matters that goes with the administrative efficiencies in our municipalities, and the skills required from senior officials who are supposed to be managing these entities in the interest of their own communities. All those matters put together is a very serious matter, to the extent that there are key and concrete proposals that are beginning to emerge on how best can we deal with these issues. Lastly, on this particular screen, which I should not forget, is the extent to which cooperative governance in terms of Chapter 3 of the Constitution is able or unable to impact in terms of support and as well as intervention to facilitate growth and development, to democratize development within communities, and therefore places these municipalities right at the center of planning and development, and impact them through cooperative efforts between all the spheres of government, working together to make sure that all the good things that have been achieved are sustained, and therefore begin to work very hard to attend to the challenges that are related to the entire system as it relates to these foundational areas of focus. This particular slide is very critical because starting from the revenue generation part of it, there are 2 points here which are very important. The first one is that Section 214 of the Constitution talks about equitable share and allocations to municipalities, and actually the entirety of government. How do we make sure that we translate what the president said we must do, the reforms of municipal funding, to the extent that there should be equitable distribution of nationally collected revenue amongst the 3 spheres of government? That point is very important in terms of this particular discussion. Related to it is that Section 229 of the Constitution talks about municipal fiscal powers and functions. How do we make sure that these streams of revenue generation that has been well articulated in the Constitution and other related pieces of legislation does find expression and permanence in bettering the financial management of municipalities, and therefore not ignoring the need to basically advance very seriously the reforms that are so much required around the revenue collection of municipalities. That point remains extremely fundamental and extremely important. And the third aspect of it is that to the extent that we are able to handle all these matters here, there is a matter of traditional and Khoisan leaders who are also looking forward to, at this point in time, finalization on what they regard as long outstanding matters of their funding, because they regard themselves as the 4th sphere of government, which is not, unfortunately, getting any funding from government. And these matters put together, as we review this funding model for local government, we are expected equally important to look at that part. And this area is also looking forward to cover the conditions of work and support for municipal councillors moving into the future. There are proposals on how do we then constitute a package of support for them to be well positioned, well empowered to be able to focus and do their work. Equally, our system of government at this point in time is characterized by a 2-tier system, of districts and as well as local municipalities. The structural and systemic challenges that are inherent in the system requires a much more closer attention. And colleagues, of course, out of your own experiences, let's have a discussion, a conversation on how best we deal with these matters. For instance, here in Gauteng, out of the discussion that we have had with them and their submissions in terms of this particular process, they are suggesting very strongly that Gauteng province does not need to have district municipalities. In fact, you can demarcate the whole province in terms of metros, but also secondary cities, and you do away with district municipalities. So those are some of the proposals that are beginning to emerge. And how do we use the local government platform as the axis of planning, implementation, and as well as monitoring, and the extent to which we look at maximization of communities' involvement as we reposition these engines of our economy from a planning point of view, but also support to deal with issues of infrastructure needs, infrastructure support, because your national developed objectives and the extent to which they get translated on the ground with regard to major projects. Somewhere, somehow, those plans are actually postponed precisely because of related difficulties and challenges that our municipalities are experiencing. Now, put together all these matters, how do we unlock and address those related or inherent structural and systemic issues that are very much problematic to the extent that they impact even the national objectives, because you need strong municipalities that are very functional to carry forward the growth and development of our country. And lastly, the capacity of municipalities and also working together with the rest of government remains one of the critical areas of need within the context of the district development model. And it will be very important to hear colleagues how they actually look at the rollout of the DDM and the extent to which it is actually positioned to maximize consolidation for proper planning and as well as distribution and allocation of the much needed resources, and obligate government departments to align their resources and their plans accordingly so that those various local spaces across the country, they are very much well supported. Next slide. Well, to the extent that municipalities are being assessed from time to time, this slide represents two things. The first one is that National Treasury, as it continues to do municipal finance assessment, working together and with the AGSA, releasing their reports from time to time, it points to the situation that says the financial management of municipalities is actually very much worrying, relating to issues of internal controls, issues of budgeting, issues of supply chain management, crime and corruption, and many other issues. And unfortunately, Special Investigating Unit, to the extent that most of those municipalities are not doing things very well, they are clients of the SIU and many other law enforcement agencies. But in short, there is a huge requirement for us to attend to these matters of finances, because a lot of money gets dispersed to municipalities. And unfortunately, from all these reports that have been consolidated, they indicate to the situation that says there is a lot of financial leakages in between, because the money that we spent allocating it to municipalities for now, though not enough, but the impact should be seriously felt by many South Africans. Just to give a very simple example of what we actually disperse on an annual basis as CoGTA, working together with the rest of other government departments through coordinated funding programs, including even grant funding. On an annual basis, from the equitable share, MIG, and other grants coming from various government departments put together, we released something like 140 billion rands disbursements to municipalities in support. Last week, when we were in Parliament, we just appropriated a budget amounting to 410 billion rands in the next coming 3 years. That is going to be dispersed to municipalities. it might not be enough, but it does not mean that South African government is not trying its best to fund our municipalities. But the impact on the ground, when you follow this money to want to actually do assessment and accountability, in some areas, you don't even see whether the money was ever sent to those areas or not. It's a very serious matter of discussion from a financial management point of view. The other part of the slide says, of the 257 municipalities that we have, 161 of them are not doing very well, 35 are dysfunctional. It's only 61 that are said to be having a clean bill of health. And this is an indictment on our side because from 1995 to date, we have thought that by now, because we have already long established municipalities, we have consolidated them to a large extent. We're supposed to be having very good system that on its own is not necessarily a matter of national concern. I mean, even this morning, we're in a meeting of cabinet committee. The state of local government arose as well, that matters are just not quite okay all over the country. And we as CoGTA, working together with the rest of our colleagues in provinces, we are expected to turn around this situation. And obviously this debate, as we look at these policy reforms, may be able to give the appropriate instruments and sharpen the levers of this system in the better way of getting things done quite properly. I think that's what this slide represents from a financial point of view. It says things are just not quite okay and they require a much more closer attention and a rethink on how best we improve in that area of finance. This one is about problems and challenges of water all over the country, province by province. And I suppose colleagues know very well their own areas from provinces, what is troubling them from Limpopo right to Western Cape, Northern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Northwest Free State. We know all those issues that appears on the screen. These are our daily preoccupation as provinces and as well as a national department working together with our municipalities. The next slide. This slide says, from 1995 to date, the South African government led by our presidents have always been very focused in trying to make sure that it supports municipalities to address issues of governance, to address issues of financial management, issues of infrastructure, of planning, and the extent to which communities are involved in the affairs of their own local authorities. Now, Project Liquidity was a support and intervention plan which was conceptualized and launched by His Excellency, the founding father of our democratic government, President Nelson Mandela. He was very clear and firm that for national government to basically transform and build a very strong nation and strong systems in government for delivery, he believed that municipalities must be strengthened and therefore be supported. And fast forward, President Thabo Mbeki, equally after he took over, integrated sustainable rural development program and urban renewal program became a part of his support and interventions program. And fast forward, President Ramaphosa is also hard at work through municipal performance and turnaround strategy. Now, the question that this slide is actually asking is, despite all these national efforts, all this national focus, all these elaborated intervention plans, why has it not been able for us to, why have we not been able, to say, for us at this point in time, to be able to give South African people very good and functional system of local government with its entities as municipalities being very effective and functional, precisely because at any given point, our presidents and ministers of local government, they have always been very closer to the system. They tried almost everything from systems, design and suggestions in terms of funding and other programs, initiatives and proposals. But up to so far, we're still sitting here with 161 municipalities that are said to be at risk, 35 dysfunctional, and 10 of that being totally dismal in terms of their performance. So the point here is the journey we have traveled we have not been able to reach the desired state of giving South Africans ideal municipalities. What are the problems? What are the difficulties from different lenses of assessment that we are actually going to be employing or advancing as you put forward your views and suggestions, given your own experiences, where you are, and how do you relate with these municipalities? What is it that should be done? Because all these matters here have been put to a practice at different times of our history from 1994 to date. But like I'm saying, there's very little, if not challenges continuing to trouble our sector and our municipalities generally across the country. So that is the question that we need to answer. What is really making it very difficult despite all this? And all these money processes represent millions of money that were used in support and as well as intervention. To the extent that we have been able to review these systems from time to time, these 4 reports which were undertaken resulted in 35 recommendations, and I think if you can just move to the next slide, resulted in almost 35 proposals from various government departments. Many government departments, out of their own frustrations of not being able to advance their own developmental plans, they realized that there are some areas which probably are very constraining on their side, and this was as a result of the need to support municipalities to a certain extent. So they came up with different policy reforms and policy proposals, and that is what this slide represents. The presidency is actually advancing the second phase of Operation Vulindlela to look at the review of the trading services with regard to water, electricity, and as well as sewer. And ourselves as CoGTA, who are lifting those matters that appears on the screen as part of intervening to strengthen the system going forward, including management of this coalition politics. National Treasury, equally important, is coming up with its own proposals on how best we strengthen municipal finance, including the extent to which we may want to strengthen Municipal Finance Management Act to illegalize certain glaring and obvious and deliberate wrong administrative decisions and actions which are taken from time to time, plunging municipalities into difficulties. And I think there are many examples I can give of such incidences which would require some lifting of the legal instruments to make it impossible, if not difficult. Department of Water and Sanitation, equally important. As in fact, last week there was a presentation of this Water Services Amendment Bill to try to want to position the water and sanitation properly within the sphere of local government as it relates water service authorities and water service delivery functions, so that there is alignment of functions and powers, and to the extent to which they are all occasioned to serve our people. Safe to say that all these reforms that you see here, they are aimed at impacting municipal space. And we said to our colleagues in government through the Interministerial Committee on Municipal Support and Intervention that it will be very important to bring all these discussions closer to this policy process for complementarity and as well as a better coordination. And we have since succeeded in doing that. So it is up to your good selves as practitioners coming from all walks of life to look at these matters very closely between today and Thursday where possible, and let's make a meaningful debate and contributions on how best we can attend to some of these matters. That is in brief what this slide represents. And this one I think we can pass because it basically raises the journey and the history we have traveled and the critical questions that we must answer. The team that we have appointed, because the process is driven politically by a steering committee, which is led by the minister and ourselves in the ministry and other departments. And there is an administrative team that was put together that is also managing this particular process. That team came up with these 9 critical points, and colleagues must discuss each one of them and make serious proposals. Just to give one example which has emerged, is that the political and administrative dynamics within municipalities, to the extent that lines have been blurred, To the extent that there is confusion and over-politicization, meaning that in most instances, officials, sometimes in some municipalities, not all of them, in some municipalities, they behave like politicians, and vice versa. In some areas, politicians also have crossed the line. They actually manage administration. So lines have been blurred, and levels of professionalism have declined to a large extent, and these account for a lot of problems in terms of leadership management, and as well as administrative processing of these institutional, intentions. All these matters put together requires some serious thinking and discussions. One key point as well before I step from this particular slide is that we have interacted with traditional leaders in many platforms throughout the country. And they have said to us that they are demanding this time around meaningful participation in the affairs of municipalities, to the extent that they've been recognized in Chapter 12 of the Constitution, and Section 212 of the Constitution talks about a national legislation to further elaborate their responsibilities in this area of work. We are expected, colleagues, to basically share discussions, and we are of strong view that we must provide a set of administrative functions that at the level of concurrence must be worked together with municipalities, because the traditional leaders and coastal leaders are saying to us that they cannot be spectators anymore on this area of local government. How do we streamline and ensure that they interface quite properly and share some common spaces, including concurrent functions, which will therefore then determine as well the extent to which funding could be determined from the review as we look at municipalities and also as we look at traditional leaders. Because, okay, Salga said to us in terms of that part of funding that we need about 31 billion rands to address the shortfall funding that is there, that would empower municipal institutions to basically perform their own function. So to the extent that these 31 billion rands can be secured from the national fiscals, we've got to as well look at how best we bring closer traditional leaders. But all said and done, colleagues must discuss all these matters and make very critical proposals on how do we deal with these matters going forward. The next slide. This one talks about, tough, if not difficult questions that have been lifted for serious, analysis and as well as a serious discussion. Now, 3 key points that I want to talk to, not everything that is listed on this slide, that I just want to comment on. The first 3 points is that there is an intergovernmental debt management problem which must be discussed and see how best we can deal with it. The first one is that municipalities are owed billions and billions of rands. In fact, is quantified as being more than 300 billion rands by municipal consumers. Related to that, government departments are owing municipalities almost 18 billion rands in total. And that money is huge. If they were to be paid tomorrow, municipalities will be in a better footing. Equally important, Eskom and the water boards, they are also demanding to be paid. Services they are rendering to municipalities, and all this intergovernmental debt put together, it is basically very much worrying, because we have already witnessed in the past few months areas where municipalities have lost management of their own bank accounts. They were touched by either water boards or Eskom. There are municipalities which are owing pension funds. There is one council municipality in the country which owes pension fund more than 300 million rands, which means colleagues have not been able to take good decisions. They are owing medical aids and all sorts of problems. Workers are not being paid from time to time in some of the municipalities. And all these matters are governance, management, and political leadership issues, which unfortunately have resulted in very serious problems and chaos. The last point I want to talk about, as others colleagues will be able to deal with, is point number 8. This assessment report, which was done all over, points to a very worrying situation. It says that the macro-social or factors that actually characterizes different municipal spaces across the country, they impact those localities and entities differently. And therefore, to the extent that malfeasance, malversation and corruption has basically found a very serious space in the sector, it's a very serious matter that requires a better management and attention. And let me give you just one example of how things could actually go very bad. There's a municipality where we had to ask the security cluster to be closer to it because there was a security tender. We're told that in the middle, that security company which was on site, it was terminated. The other one was brought on board, and the two never agreed that this one term is ended or what. So they ended up being in the municipal space, those two companies. And the only thing that could happen there was the exchange of fire. Very seriously, and then a game arose in a municipal space of government where citizens are supposed to go to get services, to be assisted in one way or the other. And when you look at the actual triggers of that, was poor or intentional decisions that were taken by the leadership of those municipal entities. Now, these matters put together, they are pointing to a situation that requires a much closer attention on how do we re-engineer our system of government so that we don't become a failed state at the municipal level by comparison with other countries elsewhere in the continent and elsewhere in the world. And therefore, the features that we're beginning to see, they are pointing to failed local states in some cases. And therefore, we must resuscitate and reclaim back those spaces because they do not belong to elected politicians as councillors or appointed officials of municipalities. Those entities, they are instruments of social transformation and advancement for the betterment of the lives of the people of their own areas where they are. But at the moment, that area requires a much closer attention. The last one here is that courts of law are taking decisions on behalf of the municipalities because colleagues in some cases, they are refusing to govern. They don't want to take decisions. They are basically abandoning their responsibility, and citizens go to court to look for a relief. We're sitting with a situation where a court of law imposed that we must disband a municipal council on the eve of these coming municipal elections. And that situation is a very serious matter. The authorities in that province, they are trying to appeal here and there. But the bottom line is that we arrived at this situation because colleagues refuse to take their own responsibility and govern their own entities. To the extent that all these matters are happening, these are 8 areas of research which colleagues as practitioners coming from different walks of life, you can participate as well, volunteer your services, choose whatever topic you are very much closer to it. The team that is led by Temba Fozi, Pascal and Alex Porain, and the Director General, they could probably pull you much more closer so that we do proper research and analysis on the things that could basically give us better policy options. Next slide. The next one, this one just easily talks about the need for a collective leadership that is so much required, administratively and as well as politically, to impact this system of government in a much meaningful way. And where things are not well coordinated, we are basically unable to be felt on the ground in terms of supporting municipalities, because all said and done equally, like I've said, we need a very effective intergovernmental system, but a cooperative governance model that is located within the DTM. Its intention, it must actually support municipalities. We must not grandstand when things are not quite okay in many of our own entities. We've got to be well coordinated and focused and deal with these matters than to actually work in different directions. That's what this slide says. Where things are extreme, will definitely have a negative impact. But where there's complementarity and collective leadership, we might impact these entities in a much better way. The next slide. This slide says, to the extent that we're actually moving all over the country, engaging with many citizens, including academia and all formations of our society and the nation. We believe very strongly that this policy is not just an exercise in vain or just an exercise for the sake of dealing with this matter now. We want to prepare for the upcoming municipal elections. This policy, in the next coming elections, once His Excellency, our President, announces a date, we should be able to govern the municipal elections, a term of office, utilizing this reviewed policy framework. So that is why by March next year, this policy, our Minister Bulawayo should be able to take it to Cabinet for approval. And therefore, between now and March, it's a must that this policy must be finalized. And as we finalize this March between now and March next year, we must deal with issues that relates to the administrative systems of our municipalities, the extent to which professionalization, infusing of ethics, and all other matters that appeared on the 35 reforms that I've referred to, which are very urgent in terms of preparing these institutions or this system for better performance, it must be attended to. Coalition Management Bill, which we are having as CoGTA, it must actually be finalized as well, including even matters of traditional. So the sequencing of the implementation of these matters remains extremely important, and therefore the finalization of the policy is uppermost in our plan to make sure that next year the coming generation of councillors working together with municipal administrative officials who are there in our municipalities can then be able to work from a basis of a refreshed policy that will have to stand yet another period of time, maybe 20 to 30 years before it could be tempered with also with a view of a reviewal. The next slide, I think this one we can pass. I'm saying we can pass it because at least colleagues know that those are foundational pillars of our local government system. And the extent to which they are actually foundational depends on how we are carrying our responsibilities to strengthen those areas. Now, this slide says, how do we restate the centrality of relations between those three components of our municipal government? How do we deepen participatory and as well as representative democracy? The centrality of our communities in the equation of municipal governance is a very serious worry. In fact, communities across the country, they are very much worried and not very excited and happy about how things are basically managed, because they believe that they have been isolated, they have been taken for a ride. They basically are saying that most of us are condescending in our public responsibilities, and therefore they would want to reclaim their authority, their centrality, and therefore dictate terms, because they produce councillors to go into office. Councillors appoint officials, they manage the entities of our municipalities. But unfortunately, in that equation, they become secondary players on the receiving end, and things that happen to a larger extent, we have forgotten that these institutions belongs to them, because when a budget is determined by National Treasury based on the criteria and all the factors that have been considered, finally it is about communities. Populations in the main determines how monies are supposed to be allocated to municipalities. But when those monies reach there, communities believe that they are not being brought back closer where decisions are made. And there are many proposals that I've seen from submissions that South Africa has made with regard to this matter on how they think they want to reclaim their space in the issues of municipal governance. And I suppose wherever you are, where you are coming from in your own municipalities, you know how your relations are with your own communities. So relational governance, it's a matter that we want to lift, so that it does not just become a by-the-way issue. It must become one of the focus points, and to the extent that we are able to assess, it becomes extremely important. The next slide. As we do so towards finalizing this policy by March next year, 2026, we believe very strongly that a municipal space is not a responsibility of CoGTA in provinces or provincial treasury nationally and in provinces, including even national. All of government because municipalities are very complex in terms of content and character. Communities don't want to know whether this is a national function or a local function. Many areas, in fact, many mayors who have interacted with are saying to us they've got huge unfunded mandates that are of provincial and as well as to a certain extent of national nature. And therefore, they are actually straining their resources because they can't deny communities to participate in some of those functional spaces. And as a result of that, they are troubled in terms of their finances. They are troubled in terms of other related issues of trust deficit between them and communities because they believe that they are not serving them better. But all what it says is that municipal space is very complex, and therefore all of government must be at one point in appreciating the complexity and the dynamic system of local government, so that we work together as a team and support these municipalities so that communities can get much value, much service that is so much required, because at any given point, when communities are not happy, they go to municipalities, even on functions of national and as well as provincial government. So we must be able to position the entire system of government to appreciate the fact that the differentiation of what is our national function, provincial and local function, to communities, it doesn't matter. And therefore, anything and everything that we want to do through this particular policy is to place at the center within the policy framework that the president has determined of a district development model, where all of government must now begin to appreciate and therefore focus very seriously in supporting our municipalities for better community involvement and as well as community benefits out of the developmental plans and objectives of their own government. This one we can pass. I think I'm about to close with one slide. The next one. Yeah, the next one. The next one. I think it's the last one. The last one. Yeah. In conclusion, we are very much aware of the fact that we are managing this policy development now under 7th administration, which is characterized by a new form of government, which is called Government of National Unity, where there is no exclusive mandate bestowed to any of the political parties now to take policy decisions, unlike before. And the need for us to be very elastic in terms of our emotional intelligence and capacity to handle this complex policy process. There are areas most unavoidably where there will be a divergence of perspectives on various policy options. And our
I seem to have lost the DM on my side. DM, are you still with us? Okay, colleagues.
I think there is a network issue where he is, because yeah.
What we can do, we will allow him to come in just to sum up as soon as he comes back. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, it's proper for me. Hello, DM. Okay, no, welcome back.
I think I was almost done to say we're trying to manage those possible political dynamics so that with this policy can be managed, and therefore the president is going to be putting in place a policy clearinghouse so that in an event those dynamics emerges and want to eclipse the good work that we would have done, we should be able to have a mechanism to deal with that. But having done that, we are planning for a policy in Daba sometimes in September. Having gone through what we are doing now, on Thursday is the deadline the team will work on the policy submissions to consolidate and produce a draft document. That document will then be taken to a policy indaba where you will be invited and many others, sometimes in September, and say, this is the outcome of all what South Africans are basically looking forward to in terms of a reviewed white paper. Then many suggestions will probably also arise out of that engagement to further enrich and consolidate it. Sometimes early in January, before March, we should be able to come back and say, now we're left with few weeks to take this report to a cabinet as a policy review document. And by that time, we want to make sure that we don't move ahead and leave the rest of South Africans behind and believe that this is our document. That is why we thought this document must be released to communities and everyone else so that they own up to the policy-making process as we review it. It must not become a departmental document influenced by officials or ourselves at the political level. So these type of engagements are highly appreciated so that you can enrich and guide on how best we can basically, input into this final document. I think that's in brief what I tried to, like I promised that I'll try to, as much as I could, to not be take too much of your time, mindful of other commitments and responsibilities elsewhere. Thank you so much, Chairperson of the session. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, DM, but you've done great because deciding to sacrifice some of the slides, which are equally important, it also helps us a lot. As I've indicated to the audience, I've listened to the Deputy Minister so many times. The messaging is the same. And it gives me pleasure. I was with the minister earlier today in one of the breakfast shows in Power FM. We were more looking on the funding model, but the conversation itself didn't have enough time. It's for that reason, for all of us in the audience, in the panel, to ensure that we take this opportunity to engage with the discussion document, ensure that we submit our comments by the 31st of July, and post September, as the DM has indicated, there will then be a second process that will then show what South Africans are saying, also opening that process up for further comments. Mr. Mapholoba, in about 10 minutes, I know you are passionate about the sector, being one of those, I would say, public servants who don't only know what they do, but they know the importance of serving the communities. Based on the presentation by the DM, your own experience within the sector, what are your insights, contributions, and comments, and perhaps touching on some of the questions and comments that might have come through? Over to you, Mr. Mapholoba.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Zolani, and let us appreciate the DM for very elaborate input of the process. I think the sector is really under siege, and it is clear that unless something drastic is done, the future is very bleak. You know, if you look at the hearings last week conducted by the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance led by Dr. Mkhize in Free State, you know, and if you also hear the executive mayor of Machabe, executive mayor Kalipa, and how he described the situation in that municipality, you know, it owing ESCOM around 5 billion, you know, and even the Minister of Public Works threatening to withdraw the grant, the incentive grant there. You know, it tells you that the sector is regressing, and therefore it needs a lot of effort to rescue it in a number of areas. Whether you look into the declining revenue, people are not paying the municipality. the infrastructure is collapsing, because most of the infrastructure that these municipalities inherited is very old, you know, and it was never meant for the population growth that we are experiencing in most of our towns. But also, if you look also at the AG's report, if you look at it, there's a current topical issue around CoGTA and Knysna in terms of the intervention, you know, and most other areas. If you look at the powers and functions, more especially in the area of water, electricity, the situation is not very good at all. But also, the issue around the ethical conduct, around issues involving fraud and corruption, and all that. But also the failure now with the advent of these, the advent of the coalitions. You know, where a person with a one-party seat can hold the whole municipality into ransom and make unachievable demands, and threaten that if that demand is not met, he will take his or her seat and go to the other side. So we are really in a very untenable situation as the sector. But this process affords us an opportunity to then say what is to be done to deal with the situation. There are good pockets of excellent work. For instance, if you look into the municipalities in the Western Cape, most of the municipalities in the Western Cape are not owing ESCOM, are not owing water boards, you know, and they are receiving clean audits, they are receiving unqualified audit opinion. So if you do a survey in the country, you will find that most of them are in the Western Cape. So we may perhaps have to ask a question: what is their medicine? What are they doing well that in other areas we are not doing well? Be able then to say what are the best practices that we can learn from those particular areas. But one of the things that has been raised, in fact, I was listening to the minister in the morning at 4:05. One of the issues that the minister is raising quite sharply, which is actually what we have been raising, is the high politicization of the sector. In fact, the previous ministers tried to depoliticize the sector, but they were in conflict with the Constitution, and the Constitutional Court ruled against the minister in terms of ensuring that all staff members in this sector are apart from holding political offices. You know, those offices have failed twice, and we have to live with a situation now where we've got a politically active sector, which is making it difficult, more especially for senior management, to be able to take informed decision to discipline staff, to act on them when there's malfeasance or maladministration in a particular area, because in the afternoon, that particular person will also be the branch chairperson, is the REC chairperson, sits in higher structures. So at the end of the day, he decides your future. He sits in the deployment committee of a political party, is able to do that. So we need that level, but also the issue of capacity. We need to work quite seriously in terms of capacity, and to know that we are able to ensure that the sector has enough skills, you know, has managers who can be able, you know, to assist in terms of being able to have a long-term vision, a long-term plan for the sector. For instance, we're in the age of climate change now, so which means how we plan, how we do things is going to change. We have got to adapt, but also to ensure that the sector is able to look throughout the regions, the SADC region. What is happening in Lesotho? What is happening in Swaziland? What is happening in Africa? What is happening globally? We had a session in the Western Cape last week. One of the things we're saying, what are the lessons we can learn from other parts of the world? How is the New York City doing? Yes, it's first class, but what are the good things that the London is doing, Sydney is doing, you know, Christchurch is doing, so that we can be able maybe to adapt some of those issues into our own context. For instance, in the situation in Knysna, we have got a very strong community of Khoi. who are claiming, who are every day, even tomorrow, I have a meeting with them who are claiming their space. You know, if you say that, no, this matter is not in our area of operation, is in the province, but they will always come to the municipality to say, we are traditional leaders in this community. We think we own this land. We want to have a stake. We to have a participation. So it's quite critical that there must be more regulations that give the traditional leaders their space, because in other areas like KwaZulu-Natal, like the Eastern Cape, like Mpumalanga, you know, and Free State, you'll find, and Limpopo, you'll find that they've got a great role to play, but also to ensure that the communities are able to play for this. So for me, I'm very optimistic about this process. The vigor in which it is undertaken by the minister, in fact, by the president himself, by the minister, by the whole the department, and the collaborative effort and the participation, I think that we will be able to resolve. But for me, I think there are too many municipalities. We have to reduce the number of municipalities. I think we've got to re-look into the more two-tier system, the district and local, to say, do we really need them to coexist? I agree with Gauteng to say, really, the one-size-fits-all approach is not going to work. For instance, if you look at the size of Gauteng, you know, why would you have a differentiated approach of a metro, 3 metros, district municipalities and local municipalities? Because geographically or spatially, Gauteng is a very small area. You know, so we need to rethink and look into that particular area and say what is the issue. But for me, as I'm saying that, I think this process gives us an opportunity. There are good things that the white paper in 1998 came up with. And I think there are things that we must maintain in that particular white paper and build on it. Anyway, we are 25 years as a sector from year 2000, 5th of December. So it is time to review anyway. But out of this process, we must come up with a strong local government. For instance, in our session last week in the Western Cape, some people were asking whether we need a 3-sphere system or we need a strong center and a strong local. So I think this debate must also not shy away, must not have holy cows. You know, it must be able also to look horizontally and look vertically into the system of governance, into the country. For instance, what powers can be delegated to local government? For instance, as I conclude, the issue of human settlement, Deputy Minister, I raised it with you when we were in Tulbach. I raised it. We are being made to perform a function that is not ours, the unfunded mandate, but nobody is compensating us on the human settlements. We've got staff, we've got everybody, but we're not getting a cent for performing that particular function, which also impacts on our finances, because I've got to pay the director, I've got to pay the manager, I've got to pay the staff in human settlement to perform a function that is not ours. Thank you very much, Zolani.
Thanks a lot, for those great insights. Dr. Kaywood, let me allow you to come in, and I know as you make your submission, you will possibly touch on some of the questions that also have come through. Welcome, Dr. Kaywood. Over to you.
Thank you, ZB, and thank you very much to the Deputy Minister for that presentation. You know, we perhaps should have declared this on a lighter but a serious note, you know, for the Deputy Minister to consider. Mr. Mapholoba and I used to work in the city of Mhlathuze. He was my municipal manager, for those of you that do not know. And I was his deputy city manager leading corporate services. And let me just say, Deputy Minister, we both did not finish our terms. That's another issue that perhaps the white paper review on local government should really look into, the politicization of the sector and how it impacts on the capacity of the municipalities. But that is not my point today. I deliberately chose to focus on the Deputy Minister's presentation. He outlines some of the local government achievements and the challenges. And I picked up on one issue, and that was social economic transformation. That is one issue that is of particular interest to me and consistently bothers me, the issue of the apartheid special patterns. He then, in his presentation, indicates it in another slide. He indicates 9 views on critical issues for the 2026 review as raised by the stakeholders in his presentation. And number 9 of those issues is again persistent spatial inequalities. But then, DM, I worry then because I lose then this issue when you outline the white paper on local government research themes. On that slide, that issue just disappears, and that concerns me. Subsequently, then, spatial inequality does not form part of the project plan or milestone 9 of the presentation that you have done. And this is consistent to the presentation that you had done somewhere around the 19th of June. For me, this is a concern to a number of the stakeholders that have raised this issue. So my input then hopefully will convince DM to relook at this issue of spatial injustice, and include it perhaps as one of the milestones. Why does this matter? I want to say we will never achieve social justice in this country without spatial justice, right? There's a lot of advocates for social justice, and we don't make the linkage between social justice and spatial justice. And I am quite happy to engage on that issue at a later stage if the opportunity comes. The reason for me focusing on spatial justice, as I did DM in the previous presentation that I made, is because spatial transformation has stalled in our country, and there are lessons that we can perhaps learn in terms of why it has stalled. We are more than 30 years into democracy, but our vision for spatial justice and that inclusive development remains largely unfulfilled in every corner of this country. And so, as we review the white paper, just like there's been much focus on the funding model for local government, rightfully so, let's not leave behind spatial inequalities. That must shape some of the discussions for the white paper review, because the legacy of apartheid is persisting. It remains a core challenge that is facing our municipalities today, amongst obviously other challenges that other people would care about. But my issue today is let's not leave behind this spatial injustice. Why has it stalled, in my view? I was thinking of writing an opinion piece. I am not a planner, but I am fascinated by planning. And the title, DM, will be 31 Years of Going Nowhere Slowly. We have a beautiful progressive legal framework, many complemented our constitution, and specifically for planning SPLUMA and other several city level instruments like our IDPs, our SDFs, and these explicitly endorse spatial injustice in so many ways, whether you look at the principles or the intents of the law. But in reality, then the special planning, the apartheid special planning patterns, they persist. They are shaping our cities as we know them today. The poor people of this country remain pushed to the urban edges, and we are seeing these informal settlements and townships just flourishing out of control. Anywhere people find space, they will put an informal settlement. The gentrification, being in the Western Cape, and high-income developments are further deepening the exclusion. We have municipalities opting to sell land to the highest bidder, caring very little about affordable housing or bringing back those that were previously excluded or pushed out of cities. It's all about, can I sell my land to Growth Point or redefine properties? We've seen that happening in Cape Town. In fact, there is a case where they were taken to court over that. And of course, local government then, DM, has its own institutional capacity weaknesses caused by several factors that we cannot run away from. I always have a problem making this statement where I say municipalities are lacking in technical or financial capacity to drive special change amongst other issues. I don't lack in capacity, DM, I would like to believe, but let's just say for today's purposes, municipalities do have a problem in some aspects. So we would need to address that, perhaps to the extent possible, through the review. But then, DM, other municipalities lack the willingness. We have local politics that local politics that dominate what should be happening nationally. We have the elite that captures and perpetuates fragmented implementation that sort of creates these winners and losers municipalities, and in essence, really undermining the goals that were set out in both SPLUMA, the white paper, and even the constitution. ZB, you will tell me if I'm running out of time. I'm not watching my time. The other issue that I never thought that I would argue for is, could we perhaps deal with the unintended consequences of decentralized local government system that we have? I mentioned this in our previous webinar, where I talk about the principle of local government autonomy is sound. It was needed considering the pre-1994 local government and how they really did not have any decision-making powers. But this decentralization without a strong IGR alignment has produced disparities in planning and delivery. One often wonders whether cooperative governance has failed in the country. This is because there's no clear national enforcement, which really diminishes real accountability across the spheres of government. As a local government advocate, despite all the challenges, I still believe in local government. So I never thought I would suggest this, but the white paper on local government review should look at actually taking away some of the functions that are deemed to be exclusively local government functions, like municipal planning. I do not believe that municipal planning should be exclusive in the interest of social justice, in the interest of spatial transformation. We have several municipalities that are capable of exercising their powers to the benefit of spatial injustice, but they opt to do otherwise. They opt to sell land or to developers or whoever will give them most money. And so I would want to argue that those that have proven incapable due to lack of willingness or whatever of exercising their powers should have their powers reduced, DM. This is an area that we should perhaps explore in your research agenda or themes as you have presented. I'm just now trying to see what else I can focus on before I'm told. Patchy implementation of critical reforms is one of the issues that I have identified. Both SPLUMA and the SDFs were designed indeed to harmonize planning and push inclusion of those that were previously excluded. But the weak enforcement, the resource inadequacy or the lack of integration with municipal budgets or the alignment means that these plans often remain rhetorical. The issue of land and housing policy dilemmas. Yes, most of us were excited with the Expropriation Act to the extent that, land would be expropriated for the benefit of public good or however legislation phrases it. Yes, that came with all its issues, political pushback and the misinformation by the president, rather, it's not my president of the United States. But social housing, as we have currently, social housing offers pockets of hope. If you look at the Bella Gardens, your Josco, however, scaling these efforts is hampered by the rising cost of land, by the slow land release, and by a topic that has been in the mouth of the minister lately, NIMBYism from the wealthier communities. The property market in NIMBYism continues to keep prime land expensive and driving this exclusive development. Affordable housing for many municipalities remains on the periphery, still far from the economic opportunities, which I then say it perpetuates this cycle of poverty and marginalization. And I argue to say it is no different from what the apartheid government did, putting people in the far-flung areas. A majority of South Africans, are still spending large portions of their limited income and time, sharply limiting their access to job or education and healthcare. So how different is this from apartheid? Education, surprisingly, is still impacted by the spatial planning. So it's not just a local government problem. This spatial injustice touches on education, where we are still in a country where a child that stays in Khayelitsha has got 0 chance or maybe less than 5% chance of going to study in a school in Plattekloof, because we still have these policies that are designed by these school governing bodies that speak to a 5-kilometer radius that, you can only attend to this school if you are staying within this area. So, DM, for most citizens, the legacy of apartheid is not historic. It's a lived reality daily, and I'm hoping that the white paper will really look at, not drop the spatial injustice as a research or something that you have to explore. It touches or undercuts the Bill of Rights, the spatial injustice, and entrenches poverty, undermines both social cohesion and economic productivity. There's ample research to support some of the statements, but this is not a research colloquium or whatever. Last point then, let's learn from the last 30 odd years as we review the paper. Let us be honest and have these really uncomfortable conversations. I like being around Mapholoba because he's always honest, and I also like being around people that are having honest conversations about what is going on. I don't know how, but we need to tie conditional grants somehow to compliance with national spatial justice goals. Perhaps let's strengthen that vertical and horizontal coordination so that all spheres share the responsibility and accountability for a meaningful and perhaps a measurable spatial reform. I will stop there as I conclude then on 2 points rather. I'm looking forward to the review, the 2026 review. It's a historic opportunity if we are serious about spatial transformation. Let's move away from the rhetorical commitment to bold, coordinated, and accountable actions from all spheres of government. Because then only then can we build cities or South African municipalities that can truly deliver social justice, that can deliver inclusion and opportunities for all. Thanks, Chair, and apologies if I took long.
No, thanks a lot, Doc, for those insights. Colleagues, at some point it was 171 of us. We are now at 127. All the comments, the inputs that have been made, the questions will be packaged. We've already had a discussion with the team on how best we can package those for the purpose of the submission by the 31st of July. As you gather your thoughts, DM, based on our 2 panelists, their insights, comments, and inputs, I just want to pick quite a few, I'll say, questions that have come through our Q&A function, and then I'll go to our registrations because we have quite a few questions and insights that came through there. Firstly, I'll start with Brian Bottas. In what are the key legislative changes proposed in the white paper that will lead to a change of direction of how local government deliver to their communities? Without really answering this, Brian, for me, it's a group project to start with. It's a collective responsibility because if we are to change that direction of local government, we might as well get involved in governance itself. And I'll allow the DM to come in just to reflect on the 2 inputs. Subsequent to that, I'll allow Mr. Mapholoba, as we try to wrap up, you can also look through the comments, the questions, and see which one you would like to touch on as part and parcel of your closing remarks. I'll also allow Dr. Kaywood to do the same. And lastly, I'll then grant the DM that opportunity just to give us his closing remarks before we adjourn with the webinar. Let me allow you, DM, to come in just the reflections based on these submissions.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Program Director, once more. And I would like to welcome the comments made by colleagues. Very important observation, and as well as insights with regard to how the system performs and basically what characterizes the current conditions and situations within our municipalities. Very importantly, responding to the issue on spatial governance for social justice and as well as economic justice, and the extent to which we can be in a better position to mobilize either policy instruments or other areas of systems management. I think it is very important for us to appreciate the fact that from 1994 to date, the extent to which the advancement of growth and development in this country inevitably has impacted many cities and small towns differently, precisely because of the need by South Africans to basically look for better opportunities and therefore their social circumstances and economic conditions changing. And those movements of people led to an acceleration, of course, linked to other factors in those urban centers, led to what I would regard as rapid metropolitanization of our cities as a result of very complex factors that are at play. And to the extent that those factors require management and as well as leadership, the complexities related thereto, obviously, in my view, overwhelmed. And even now, they are still overwhelming the municipal leadership, including even the administrative, managers, to the extent that national government, working through CoGTA, came up with what was regarded as an IUDF policy, integrated urban development framework. And that framework talks to very serious fundamental matters that require. And the unfortunate part of it is that after that policy was developed, finalized, and published, when you assess the extent to which, and I think the last speaker, Dr., how she was relating to the reconciliation between the 9 points and the research areas, that there seemed to be a missing link of spatial governance. Within the well-defined integrated development framework, it says there are issues of governance and leadership that is very top in the driving implementation of that policy imperative. Linked to it, it is about appropriate spatial governance, looking at space intensity and the need for land use, and how do we, as you relate and try to manage those complex factors which facilitate or accelerate metropolitanization of our major and secondary cities. All those factors together, they require that much more closer collaborative effort. And of course, like I said earlier on, and I fully agree with what colleagues have said, that the sector, to a large extent, it is under siege from both positive issues that requires much better management for development, but equally important, it is under siege from other negative factors that characterizes those particular spaces. In delineating the 2 points, we should be able to agree that local government alone, in driving the implementation of those broad framework of urban development, including even rural areas being focused, being looked at from a land use management point of view, the interplay between those organs of municipal administration and as well as our traditional leaders. In the whole equation, they require that collaborative support and interaction. That is one part. Related to it, she says very strongly that she advocates for the rearrangement of the powers and functions, and that we have been, to a large extent, been able to decentralize functions largely to municipalities and therefore led to disparities and differentiated approaches, the pace and the tempo on matters of growth and development of our own areas. I'm not sure whether to a large extent we might be able to get that point very easy, to reclaim some of those functions back easily. But now, what the presidency, through Operation Vulindlela, for instance, is doing and working together with NATO Treasury and ourselves is an appreciation of the fact that if you take, for instance, how we have been able to electrify the entirety of the country through ESCOM and other related municipal infrastructure delivery mechanisms on matters of energy, the country has done very well to a large extent. But on matters of water and management of sewer services in many parts of the country were found wanting. And that is the reason why the policy process on the reforms on municipal trading services becomes extremely important. And that is where I suppose colleagues and practitioners within the sector must be very much interested in terms of how do we therefore then participate in that policy making process so that whatever outcome that becomes a policy matter which would finalize all these issues relating to the difficulties within which we find ourselves in this area of work, we are able to say we probably would have adjusted some of those matters. So for me, it's not necessarily about powers to a large extent, it is about the modeling. How do we model the systems to the extent that they can be able, within the very same constitutional framework of assigned powers and functions to municipalities? Let's discuss the remodeling and the methods, how best we can deliver certain functions. And one of those proposals, for instance, it says we must consider establishment of public municipal utilities that will focus on water, that will focus on electricity, that will focus on sewer in those given spaces, either at the district level or in a metro or in a particular secondary city like Mbombela, Umsunduzi, and as well as Polokwane. As we discuss those municipal trading reforms approach and processes, we should be able to focus on those urban centers, but including even rural areas to the extent that we can locate such models of delivery of services at the district level. So those discussions, they are part of those listed 35 policy options, reforms that are suggested by various other departments. So I thought that that matter is very key. But lastly, on my side, facilitators, that all said and done, we must be able to succeed in securing better funding model for municipalities. In fact, we're very much lucky because for the first time since 1994, a head of state and government, His Excellency, pronounced in the State of the Nation address and gave us an instruction that you guys must put together all your systems together, review the funding model of local government, and come back and propose as to how best this area can be attended to. It is not necessarily a panacea to all sorts of problems, but it is a very positive, a policy endeavor that unavoidably it will bring serious adjustments and changes in terms of how municipalities plan and deal with what has been raised here as social justice within the spatial framework development, mindful of the apartheid spatial planning realities that we are confronted with. And those issues, apart from the finances that we are able to make an advancement, they will require very bold decisions, because I mean, if you look at Alexander and Sandton, and you look at the number of informal settlements in many parts of the country, almost every major city or town has got a feature of informal settlement. Do we want to see those as permanent features of our urban centers, or they should become temporary areas of residence for as long as we are still unable to provide some solution? So for us to eradicate that part, I fully concur with her that it would require very serious, bold decision, which will not be easy though at the same time, because those areas, okay, some of the towns are landlocked in terms of the space availability and how you deal with those realities that confront their actual human settlement patterns at the moment. But be that as it may, part of the reforms document that appears on that list is about human settlement. And if we can be able to go deeper into what Human Settlement Department is proposing, there are bold ideas that are beginning to emerge out of that particular framework. If we can succeed in getting them a process right up to the end and we have a final piece of legislation, probably we might have the appropriate instruments as we move forward to address some of the matters. But I think we should be able to appreciate the journey we have traveled so far, and the history calls on us now to determine a better policy framework for local government so that 30 years from today, when we look back, we should be very proud as this generation of practitioners that are actually responsible for the management of this sector from an intellectual point of view, but also from the day-to-day running of these institutions, to provide the insight that will guide the proper policy framework, which will guide the future development of our municipalities as a country. I think with these few words, I just want to really appreciate this opportunity to have been part of this conversation. I'm looking forward to many more others as we continue to shape the future of our municipal administration. And as I conclude, I would appreciate the chairperson that if you allow me to disconnect immediately. At 5 o'clock, there's an agenda engagement that just came through here from a different angle, which I can attend to it. And I really appreciate this opportunity heartily from the cockles of my heart. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No, thanks a lot, DM, from our side as well. And we will be reaching out to your office. We plan to have plenty of these webinars, even post the period of September, building towards March 2026. Thanks a lot for your time. We appreciate you. We appreciate your work, and all the best for what's left of today. As we get to our conclusion, colleagues, as I've indicated, because I'll be taking my panelists just for them to reflect on some of the questions and comments that have come through. But the commitment that we've made, hello, TM? The commitment that we've made is that we will collate the comments, the questions, where possible, so that we are able to make that submission. As I hand over to you, Mr. Mapholoba, as I've indicated, there were some questions that came through the registration. I'll just reflect on just a few of them. This one is more around the issue of fiscal decentralization. Is it not time that local governments be given powers and functions to collect fuel, mining, and manufacturing taxes? The second one was more around the issue of ethical governance. How does the new legislation intend to improve ethical governance when councils and senior managers are not held to account for their irregular and irrational decisions, which often have financial and legal implications? The last one, which also links to one of the questions in the Q&A function, and also the comment that just came through, is how do we achieve the professionalization of local government sector, where after 30 years, there is no standardized curriculum for the local government in our higher institutions? And again, colleagues, looking at all these questions and comments, it's the conversations that within the sector we often engage about. And again, it will be important as we engage further with the paper that is out, then we'll be in a position to be able to influence those particular outcomes. Mr. Mapholoba, your closing remarks, sir.
I think we must not miss this opportunity and other opportunities legislatively. There's a lot of legislation that is currently before Parliament. The Public Services Commission Amendment Bill, the Intervention Bill on Section 139, support the Local Government Laws Amendment Bill is also before Parliament, because some of these processes will take a bit of time. You know, the white paper will take a bit of time. There are instruments that are currently before Parliament that I would like the colleagues to make an input. But also we must make an input in the remaining days before Thursday. I know ILTM has been playing a great role. SIGFARO has been playing a great role. They've made tremendous inputs into this particular process. Various provinces have had sessions with all stakeholders, traditional leaders, as the minister, deputy minister was saying. This platform as well has played a very great role in ensuring that you are also able, and I hope that you will be able to consolidate what has come up to this process so that you and Dan can make a submission. I would really appreciate that, but I must really again thank Dr. Kaywood for being steadfast. I think that she must go back to school and do masters in town and regional planning, because I think she will be a great asset in that particular space. I must thank you, Zolani, as well, and then for ensuring that you are able to make these critical inputs and for affording us this platform. You know, there's a lot of enthusiasm to this. A lot of people are listening. They are watching here. But also, we must also call upon structures of civil society. You know, in Msunduzi, I've seen Anthony is here on the platform from Msunduzi. I know in Knysna, for instance, there's a lot of structures of civil society that are very active, like AfriForum. I would like that maybe when we go to future webinars, some of the structures of civil society, they are as well invited so that we can engage, you know, so that we don't unnecessarily have to take each other to courts on matters that we can resolve. Thank you very much, Zolani.
Thanks a lot for that. And indeed, it's one of our thinking that let these webinars not stop now. Let these webinars continue even beyond March 2026 to ensure that even the white paper itself, it gets taken to various communities, to various stakeholders. But we take note of that request and proposal, Mr. Mapholoba. Definitely we will work on that. Dr. Kaywood, your last parting shot before we can conclude.
Thanks, ZB. Protocol dictates that after the Deputy Minister has spoken, we do not speak, and also my former manager has spoken. I just want to really make one statement, which a point I've made before is, you know, through social justice remains elusive. It will be out of reach until we are able to fundamentally transform the spaces that are perpetuating injustice. And this will go a long way in ensuring that all people of South Africa can access opportunities and live with dignity and equity. So in sum, I want to conclude and say again, we can never have social justice without spatial justice. Thanks.
That's a great way to close it off. And then there's a comment that just came from Michelle. Yes, Michelle, the webinar will not only be available online, you will get it in your inbox. As we are on that, colleagues, we are going back to our local government conversations. We took a break of about 2 months, but that also gave us space for us to be able to engage on the white paper. On the 20th of August, we are back on our 4th annual local government conversations. That email will be out for those who are connected with us in the social media platforms. Definitely you'll be able to get that information. On that note, colleagues, let me thank Dan again and the team, the Municipal Edge, as also Mr. Mapholoba has indicated that the platform that we've created then will go a long way in the history books of local government as we navigate the storms that we are in today. Similarly, with the team at the Municipal Edge, we will forever be grateful. Business engineering, I saw you, Philip, in the chat. Thanks for sponsoring this webinar. Without those collaborations, we cannot do much. And of course, the support that we continue to get from Sigfaro, Salga, and Simam, we are forever grateful. And for sure, in the next coming webinars, if not the one of September, we will be having you as our supporters so that we can see how best we can narrow some of these conversations to most of the topical issues. From my side, colleagues, thanks a lot. I'm signing off until we meet again on the 20th of August as we explore one of the biggest challenges in the Municipal Standard Chart of Accounts, where we'll be looking at the current process on regulating the Municipal Standard Chart of Accounts, also given the challenges that we have. On that note, have a great afternoon, and we'll meet again in August. Goodbye.